Lawrence, what would you do if you had $1 million?
I'll tell you what I'd do, man. 2 chicks at the same time, man.
That's it? You had $1 million, you'd do 2 chicks at the same time?
Damn straight. I always wanted to do that, man. And I think if I were a millionaire, I could hook that up, too, because chicks dig dudes with money.
Well, not all chicks.
Well, the type of chicks that double up on a dude like me do.
Good point.
Well, what about you now? What would you do?
Besides 2 chicks at the same time?
Well, yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing, huh?
I would relax. I would sit on my ass all day. I would do nothing.
Well, you don't need $1 million to do nothing, man. Take a look at my cousin. He's broke, don't do shit.
Episode 75 of the Cult of Matt and Mark Cult Film Review Podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Mark.
And make sure to visit our blog at cultfilmreview.blogspot.com or shoot us an email at cultfilmreview@gmail.com. Show news? Got any show news this week?
Well, it's our Diamond Jubilee.
Oh, man. Is that Diamond?
I think 75 is Diamond.
Okay.
So that's nice. And I think it's a pretty solid movie for our Jubilee.
Yeah, 75.
Yeah, so it's pretty impressive. Hey, you see any movies this week? I actually saw a couple of movies this week in addition to our actual assigned film.
No.
See, I watched 1999's Wing Commander with Freddie Prinze Jr. Boy, that was a terrible movie.
We were talking about cat people being a common trope in sci-fi for some reason.
Yeah, and they had the Kilrathi in the Wing Commander, if you remember back from the old 286 days. Yeah. Boy, that was a terrible movie. Not only it was a low-budget, early CGI movie, but there was actually some practical. The CGI was so bad and so stilted that I had trouble telling what was CGI and what was bad practical effects. It was an interesting position to be in. I don't recall.
That could be good and bad.
I still can't quite figure out if the Kilrathi were terribly animated puppetry or if it was terribly animated CG.
I flip through it. It's on Sci-Fi every now and then, and I'll hover over it for about 5 minutes, and then some bad acting intrudes on the film, and I was like, I'm done. I can't watch it. So
oh boy, it was just awful. See, the other movie I saw, I finally saw Prometheus.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it's got some good stuff going for it, and it's got some jaw-droppingly what the fuck were they thinking stuff too. I mean, just straight up just bad stuff that it just on its face was a bad idea and poorly executed. It's a weird movie.
I think it suffers from what I call the was it J.J. Abrams who did Lost? He did Lost. Suffers from the Lost smarter than you sort of style of plotting, which leaves pretty much everything open-ended and nothing straightforward. It leads you to no conclusions, which I kind of like, but then you realize that it's all sort of blended up and there wasn't a lot of thought behind it. I've read novels this way that seem to be smarter than you, and then you get into it and you realize that they're just kind of bullshitting you the whole time, and I got that with a little Prometheus a little bit. I don't think any of the whole themes were plotted out very well. So
it's too bad.
It looked nice.
I like the idea behind it. I really like the idea of a petty, vengeful god, which is sort of the idea of the movie,
more or less. Yeah.
And I like that idea, and I thought a lot of the elements surrounding that were really nicely done, but it's just like they didn't take enough care with it. They didn't. I mean, it looked nice. It was slick, but it was just like the abortion scene. It was just poorly done. It just did. I mean, it was just stupid. I mean, it was really, they just glossed over. They could have done so much more with that surgery scene, but all they had was it had like a laser cutter, a skin stapler, and like one of those jaws from that you play in a arcade trying to get a bunny rabbit or something. It was just so cheaply done. It was
That's
very confusing movie.
That's all you need in a sci-fi operating room is a laser, a mechanical
Auto stapler
arm, and an auto stapler.
It was really poorly done. Anywho, sort of a disappointment.
Let's get into the movie this week, which is not a disappointment at all. Certifiable cult classic from 1999, Mike Judge's Office Space. Plot rundown real quick here. In a film that takes plenty of jabs at the nihilism of corporate life, Ron Livingston plays office drone Peter Gibbons, who conspires with his cubicle cohorts to embezzle money from their soulless employers. With help and hindrance from those around him, including eminently quotable workplace nerd Milton Wadhams, played by Stephen Root, and the affection of waitress Joanne, played by Jennifer Aniston, Gibbons might just find his sanity and his revenge. So
weird that movie,
short, abbreviated.
That review touches on probably the two weakest points of the film. The weakest certainly is being Joanne, and the second weakest, though nicely performed by Root, is the Milton character. He's the other.
Yeah.
Those are the two weak. That's weird. It was a nice, concise sum up, but it summed up the worst parts of the film.
I know. Well, Milton was the genesis of Office Space. It was a animated short done by Mike Judge, I want to say in the early 90s.
Yeah, that's the sort of stuff that made it onto liquid television back in the day.
Yeah, it featured Milton and I believe Lumbergh.
Unnamed at the time.
Unnamed at the time. And the actor that played Lumbergh, what's his name? He was on Entourage for a while. Pretty iconic.
Oh, Gary
dude.
Cole? Yeah.
Gary Cole. Yeah,
Yeah.
He was talking about playing Lumbergh, and he said he was more or less playing Mike Judge playing Lumbergh. So,
yeah, he just copied the mannerisms in the short, which was plenty of material right there.
Right. So this was Mike Judge's first full-length live-action, if you will, film, known mostly for his work in Beavis and Butthead, which I think really was had a lot more going for it than I guess what do you want to call it? The peripheral critic really wanted to admit. It seemed to get lambasted as sort of the nadir of American culture, kids' fascination with Beavis and Butthead. But if you actually watch Beavis and Butthead, there's more insight going on there than people who hadn't watched the show but criticized it could really admit. And I loved watching old Beavis and Butthead. It was one of my college standbys.
It was a solid animated show, and actually Beavis and Butthead Do America is a pretty decent animated film. And there was a great old. You remember those old King's Quest or those Sierra point and click adventure games?
Yeah.
There was an absolutely premium point and click adventure game back in like the 486 days. That was a Beavis and Butthead game.
I remember that.
Really well wrought. I played that, and it was really it sort of came right at the end of the cycle of that type of game creation style, and it was very well done.
Yeah. I know you and I were both fans of the Beavis and Butthead, which kind of made us Mike Judge fans. He had some other efforts that I don't. Well, King of the Hill his deal?
King of the Hill's pretty solid. I've watched probably maybe 20% of the episodes, just catching them here and there. Pretty solid stuff.
Yeah. So
it's probably better than Beavis and Butthead from a story standpoint and interesting characters.
It's definitely better than The Simpsons, which I stopped watching, I think, after the 5th season. Now it's on like season 30. I don't know. But it had a little bit more real characters incorporated into the animated,
it's a pretty nice sort of sitcom type show.
Yeah.
It's very solid. It could have been done live action, really.
Right. I have quite a, I guess, what's the right word? Some commonality with Mike Judge.
Oh.
Well, with Mike Judge. And I don't have his
you're talking from a career standpoint.
Yeah, because Mike Judge, I believe he has a degree in, I want to say, physics. He does. He has a Bachelor of Science in Physics from University of California at San Diego. I myself have, a bachelor's and a master's in physics. He went on to work, I believe, for a defense contractor, and I want to say it's either Lockmart or Raytheon, doing sort of the kind of soulless engineering work that's depicted in the movie Office Space, where he sort of accumulated anecdotes to create the characters that you see in the film. He became disillusioned, obviously, with his work in the corporate world, and I guess he was a musician too. He was a bassist, and I dabbled with the bass for a while. He actually played in bands and things. And then he got into animation and comedy and won some award in animation festivals. And then he went on to do Frog Baseball for Beavis and Butthead, and then that went into Liquid Television, and then he got the series from that, and then so on it went. Mike Judge's other films I find actually equally entertaining, but on a different level. Idiocracy was
I enjoy Idiocracy quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, it was a poorly promoted Mike Judge film, which was great. And then there was Extract, which hardly anybody saw, which was really good. I didn't like
it as much. I think it's just from a storyline standpoint. There was a couple of great characters, certainly.
It was a more subtle film.
It certainly was. It was very reserved, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I liked Office Space. I think I saw this back in '99 when I was unemployed. And I remember there was a secret pining I had to be Peter Gibbons. It was like, oh, well, at least he had a job. It seemed like an okay job, and he had his own apartment, and he had a girlfriend. To me,
it'd be nice to have that sort of job security.
Because I was living with my parents at the time, and anything other than that seemed like, I don't know, some kind of Disneyland that I was unable to partake of. So when I watched Office Space, I don't think I could relate to it as well. And it's only after the years of working 13 to 14 years in cubicles and sort of dealing with the, the nihilism? Is that kind of like the absurdity of
you can't really quite wrap your mind around the grind until you get a decade or so into it. It's just sort of almost unconscionable that you find yourself in that position for years and years. I mean, I love the opening scene's just so perfect for driving.
You drive a lot more.
Is absolutely genius. I mean, that's every fucking morning.
You drive a lot more in bad traffic than me these days. So
yeah.
I
got a 30-mile commute every day, so it's in rush hour
on some of the worst congested highway in the state.
I think it's only the 5th worst in the nation.
In the
nation. Traffic.
Yeah.
So it's not too bad. He was in SoCal, so it was actually worse.
You do the re-queuing.
The scene. Oh yeah, I get really aggressive some days. Where you're just being a total dick out there, just looking for every little inch. It's really just a way to keep your mind, just to find something interesting in the hour and 10 minutes you're going to be sitting on the freeway. Just find something. There's nothing much to do, once you're done listening to the 8-minute recycled news cycle on the news station or some fucking inane article on NPR talking about some lady trying to live off of sunlight or something. And it's just something to do. And boy, I sure would get angry, but that example of the old man on the walker just fucking floors me every time I see it.
I don't get the guy on the walker, but I get the smug bicyclists who you can tell are racing me to try to beat me through a stoplight at some point. And occasionally it happens, and you just get that self-satisfied kind of oral shockwave coming off the bicyclist, knowing that he beat you through traffic and he was on a bike and you were in a motorized vehicle, and fuck you. And then
but that's just a natural feeling you get when you commute on a bicycle. I had the same feeling when I did that for a couple of years when I lived in Seattle, bike commuted. There's nothing but anger and hatred during the commute, and you will hate anything around you, be it a pedestrian or a bicyclist or a motorcyclist or other drivers. Whatever it is, you hate them and wish them
That's why Michael
ill.
Bolton was listening to gangster rap inside his Toyota Corolla and just rocking out to the Ghetto Boys or whatever it was on the dial.
I do love the rap music soundtrack in this movie. It's really top-notch stuff.
Yeah, actually, that was something that Mike Judge lobbied for. He had a lot of battles with the studio about how this film should be done. He hated the poster for Office Space. He thought it was absurd, and you can't really tell what's going on there. You get kind of this picture of, I guess, Milton encased in Post-its with a thing that says "work sucks" over the top of it. I guess he was really disgusted by that.
It's a pretty weak piece of marketing.
But they didn't like the gangster rap soundtrack, which really sort of made the whole film. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was like hyperbole in absurdity at the same time.
Well, this movie's all about really, it's about Peter and his existential crises. And he just, Peter's a little bit of he's a little stupid to a certain extent, and he just sort of changes his mindset over and over and tries different stuff over the course of this movie.
Well, he becomes permanently hypnotized, which is something.
No, not really.
You don't think?
He's only hypnotized for a portion of the film, and then he comes back out of it once he gets his promotion, and then he goes into the whole criminal idea, and then at the end he goes into the manual labor thing. So he's always got a new idea to find happiness, and he never finds it there. I mean, we can think that maybe he finds happiness working outside, but after a while, is he going to get tired of getting yelled at by the foreman and getting up at 6 a.m. so they can drive their ass up to La Crienta? Yeah, I'm doing the drywall on the new McDonald's up there. He's going to get tired of that, too, and plus the low pay that you get doing jobs like that. So, he's just trying. It was like any of us do. You throw anything at the wall and see what sticks, and that's what Peter's doing. He can't find peace.
Have you ever worked in cubicles or in a cubicle environment?
I mean, not like a hardcore office cubicle, because I've always had like a wet element of my work where you got to get dirty and tear living things apart. Right. So it doesn't really lend itself to a cubicle, though I guess you could clean a fish in a cubicle if you're really hard pressed.
I've worked in cubicles pretty much my whole career. I don't work in them full time. I have a considerable component of lab work that's accompanied with my job, but I definitely can relate. And unlike Peter, I work in a cubicle bay without any windows, which makes for even a more odd world, especially in the Northwest, where you walk into work at 7:30 or 8 in the middle of winter and it's pitch black, and then you get out of work at like 4:35 and it's like graying, getting dark, and you don't see light for weeks, and it really kind of wigs me out. It's
February is just terrible.
November seems to be the worst for me, because that's when we flip to daylight savings time, and all of a sudden it was light at 5:30. Now the sun was setting at 5:30. Now it's setting at 4:30, and it just totally crushes me. It's the worst. It's just that acceleration of darkness.
I guess you're right. I mean, once you get sort of in that the autumn solstice, the autumn equinox, then you just know that the days are flying. I mean, the daylight's just bleeding out of your life. It's just when it gets to February and it's been 3 months of bullshit dark weather. That's when it gets finally. I just have I have like a psychological break where I just curl up in the fetal position and cry myself to sleep for a couple of weeks. And every winter, and there's been 38 of them so far. Maybe not the early ones.
39.
I still shake my head and just cannot believe it.
So anyway, I can relate to working in cubicles. I think Peter has a better cubicle situation than I do, because mine is Boeing. Oh, sorry, I mentioned where I work. Probably shouldn't have done that, but oh well.
Well, anyway, hypothetically, for a guy that works at a company like that.
Yeah. The cubicles are kind of quads, I guess. I don't actually have my own partitioned section off where it's just me by myself. Those are kind of like manager cubicles or senior engineer cubicles. When you're I guess in my position, I think I've been offered like my own cubicle, but then I felt really weird about it because I didn't want to have some sort of nascent class warfare develop because there was a senior person in one of these quad cubicles, and I was in a single cubicle. But our cubicles are like a giant cubicle, and we each face the four corners of it. So there's four people per, and we face four corners. And in the middle, there's sort of this round table where you could spin around and have a quick meeting if you wanted to.
And there's a guy in there with like a whip that just constantly turns in a circle and hits you on the back lightly with a crop.
The guy sitting next to. His name, he reminds me of a character in Office Space, but his name is Tom Penkaski, who reminds me of Tom Smokowski in Office Space.
That's funny. You're getting really specific today.
Yeah, he's constantly worrying about the company going under, and we're all going to be looking for jobs or moving to St. Louis, and it's kind of this sort of diseased component of my workday experience that gets me down, and so I try to avoid him as much as possible. But he does a lot of web surfing because he's extremely unexcited about what he's doing at work, and then guess what they're doing now? He's the biggest cynic, I think. I'm a cynic, but he takes cynic to the infectious, like, not fun level. He doesn't know when to quit. So
why, again, did you not take your own cubicle? That just still amazes me.
I don't know. Well, I have the opportunity that I can move workplaces. I think I have like 4 or 5 desks that I can sit in, and a lot of those desks are in rooms that have only me in them, which is kind of weird. Like, I'll go into I call it like a ghost office space. So I'll go in and nobody's there. It's just me, and there's like 10 cubicles, and I'm working by myself. And, you'd think that would be great, right? Peace and quiet, nobody bugging you, nobody answering the phone from accounts receivable across the way, Lumberg not circling, the desk to try to get you to work the weekends. But it has like a deprivation to it, like solitary confinement, that is almost more excruciating. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like work is work no matter what you do, and at a certain point, if you're doing something 8 hours a day, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just going to start to suck after a while.
Well, I mean, maybe having a sort of a shared cubicle is just at least some variety in your day. You gotta find ways to put variety in your day. You don't want to be doing the same thing hour after hour.
Right. Yeah. So cubicles, which is sort of the stand-in for a jail cell, I think, in Office Space. At least that's the way I view it. The cubicle is sort of a, I don't know, like
it's just
a
an
voluntary
organizational
jail
tool.
cell.
I guess. I mean, I guess the cubicles don't seem too oppressive in this movie, but maybe since I'm not really super familiar with them,
well,
they're more oppressive to you.
Reading up on the cubicle, and the cubicle is actually an invention by the Herman Miller Research Corporation, maker of the Aeron chair. You can get that in True Black. Anyway.
Sounds expensive.
It's a Michigan industrial design group that makes office furniture. They've been around, a long time, ages. And in the 60s, they developed something called the action office, because back before then, people used to sit in gigantic rooms with the desks all sitting out facing the same direction or whatever.
Oh, yeah. You sort of see those in classic films or oppressive movies about the oppression of large organizations.
The one I remember most prominently, the old office style, was from the old movie 9 to 5 with Jane Fonda, Dolly Parton, and Lily Tomlin.
Yeah, never seen it.
Their office is a pre-action office. They're all like sitting in like a gigantic room full of desks pointed the same way, and so everybody can see everybody. And I'm looking at a picture right now, and it seems like a gigantic classroom. It seems worse. Cubicles, or the whole idea, this invention that the Herman Miller Group came up with, seems much better idea for laying out office space. And now we sort of make fun of them, but I don't know. You don't want to go back to the old. I mean, how do you put that many people in an area to do office work and make it function? You're gonna get stuck with something. And I don't know, cubicles seem to be sort of the lesser of an evil.
Well, they give you a spot to hang up your Navy SEALs poster.
Yeah, right. And your Snoop Doggy Dogg picture.
Yeah, your Snoop Dogg picture.
So I always call Office Space sort of the existential classic of our time, and I just kind of say that blithely. But is it sort of pointing to that, or is this more of like a character study? Is this just Mike Judge rolling out quirky, awesome characters that we can all relate to because we've met these people for real in real life? Like I just mentioned Thomas Minkowski being exactly like the guy Tom Penkaski who sits right near me. It seems like Mike Judge is always fascinated with these characters that he meets in real life that we've all kind of met. Like Beavis and Butthead were two punk-ass delinquents that he knew from, his time in grade school or junior high or whatever. So, I don't know, your thoughts?
Well, I think that the movie's mostly an examination of existential crises and what you're supposed to do with your life. And I think it pretty much shows that the people who make peace with it are happier than the people that don't. I mean, just look at Peter. Peter's terribly conflicted because he doesn't know, he's not happy with what he's doing with his life. And other people, while they may be miserable to a certain extent, like, Mike Bolton or
Michael Bolton.
the Samir, they both have made peace with it to a certain extent, and they're okay with this sort of low-level workaday life.
Right.
And while they may not be super happy, they're getting by. Same with Bill Lumberg, and the same with maybe the Bobs.
The Bobs.
But there's other people who are miserable because they haven't really made peace with it. And I think that you were talking about Tom earlier. Tom hasn't really made peace with it, but he does find some sort of solution. I really love where he gives Peter some advice.
Near the
end of the movie, and I have a little clip from that.
Sure.
I know how you get depressed about your job and all, and I just wanted you to know that I know how you feel. I used to be the same way.
Really?
Sure. Well, maybe I didn't whine as much, but I bet I hated my job even more than you. And I've been doing it for over 30 years.
Wow.
Just remember, if you hang in there long enough, good things can happen in this world. I mean, look at me.
Which is an awesome line.
You sort of missed the joke there because he's in
Yeah.
traction and has like one of those head immobilizing, I forgot what they call those sort of exoskeleton things for when you break your neck.
Because he got smashed by some drunk driver.
Yeah, but that's just fucking hilarious, and it's heartfelt advice. It's funny, and it's true in a certain extent that sometimes things do work out aside from your own. It's not a product of your own effort. It's more of just a product of the vicissitudes of the world, and so it's a piece of advice. I don't think it's necessarily a good piece of advice.
No,
but it worked for Tom. I think that's a lot of the plan. That's the long-term plan of a lot of people, including myself. I just got to wait for something better to come along instead of making your own. So progress. You wait for progress to just arrive.
Maybe this is sort of a component of our ongoing debate, our fate versus free will debate that you and I have. I'd say it's a mix, but you believe in fate and I believe in free will. But at a certain station, there are consequences. There's things out of your control that just, you just end up in a certain place for good or bad. You've tried to direct your destiny to a certain extent. But, yeah, you just have to make peace with life in your late 20s when things start to settle in, when the die is cast, and you got to kind of get on with it.
Well, I mean, the movie's not telling you what you should do. It's just saying it just presents a lot of solutions as Peter's working through. I mean, Peter's just he's grasping at straws, and he does it throughout the whole movie, and that's just another one of the options. Peter doesn't take this option necessarily, but he takes a little more of a proactive option. But the movie just sort of throws out these solutions that people have, And it doesn't really make any judgment on them. It just offers them up for your thoughts. And I really like the way the movie doesn't get preachy at all, but
No.
it doesn't not talk about these issues that are important. And
Yeah.
that's
No.
one of the ones. That's one of the ones I enjoy.
I definitely have the tchotchkes moment. My friend Emma and I, we go do lunch quite a bit, and we're in existential crises over our job and just the absurdity of the people that we work with and the point of it all, and how the gigantic machine continues to function day after day despite the absurdity of it. And we just sit there and whatever, and we take lunch really early. We take lunch at like 10 to 11, because that's like all we can stand to get like just to just get through the morning. It's like, you're crossing a finish line. It's like, just if I can get to lunch, but the worst part is getting done with lunch and then heading back into the office for 3 or 4 hours left in the day. And that's probably the worst, when I sit back down at my desk after lunch and I'm like going, thinking about filling the time, crap I got to do. But yeah, that line where Peter Gibbons is like going up to Samir and Michael's Gibbons like, hey, you guys want to go to Chasky? He's like, it's 9:30. He's like, I don't know, man. If I stick around here, I'm gonna...
Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Yeah. So like, if I just got to stick around here one more minute, I'm gonna lose it, And so
Off to let you go.
So can I get you gentlemen something more to drink, or maybe something to nibble on? Some pizza shooters, shrimp poppers, or extreme fajitas?
Yeah.
Just coffee.
Okay. Sounds like a case of the Mondays.
It's so awesome.
The beginning of this movie is so tight. It's just great.
Yeah,
It
it's just
sounds like a
hitting
case
the
of the
beats.
Mondays.
Mike Judge, when he was working on the film, they wanted to set the film in somewhere like Wall Street or somewhere more iconic or something that I guess everybody could relate to as being associated with corporate life. And he was no way. And
Yeah,
he made
that's fucking outrageous.
he made effort in this film to make it look like everywhere, especially with the ubiquitous yet characterless office parks that we see dropped onto the earth, off of every freeway and highway. And then kind of goitered to those industrial parks, the chain restaurants like Chili's and TGI Fridays, which is sort of the stand-in for tchotchkes. He wanted to make it look like the miserable sort of parking lot landscapes of America, because that's where a majority of us have to spend our days, and it's soulless, horrible places like that the more I visit the country, the more I see of, and the more I get depressed about. The worst, I think, is Ohio. Ohio is just like some kind of cancer of industrial parks and malls and parking lot landscapes that we see in America that just somehow crush the human soul in a way that I can't quite describe. And so Mike Judge made a point to, like, the license plates have a sort of a generic American flag on it. He filmed in Austin, Texas, I guess, because that's out in the industrial parks outside of town.
But they said it in. It sounded like Southern California by some of the place names they used, but maybe they were made up place names.
I think it all kind of blends into each other on purpose. He wants to make it like a suburb beltway of any big American city. Like California has that kind of. We always associate that kind of landscape with California, but that shit's everywhere.
Yeah, you're right.
Another place that's horrible like that is the Beltway at D.C. Drive around Washington, D.C. It's just littered with god-awful, characterless industrial parks where, I don't know, little thought is put into how the buildings are designed. They're moated with these gigantic asphalt parking lots because everybody fucking drives in the U.S. There's no public transportation. And then these lunchtime spots that hang off of these industrial parks where all the suits go at lunch to go blow off a little steam. And he captures that perfectly.
Oh, the shot skis is so fucking perfect.
In a way that just, I guess, hits home. And nobody really does that in the U.S. Nobody makes kind of a cinematic comment on how fucking ugly the United States is in huge, vast tracts of undifferentiated landscape that we see all the time. We always get movies like set in the gritty streets of New York City, or, a little bit like, the old industrial zones of LA or San Francisco. So if somebody were just watching American movies, they would get this kind of romantic idea about our landscapes and what it looks like. But yet when you get dropped in it and you're driving from the airport to somewhere nice, you got to drive through this this like fascist architecture that just goes on for miles and just brutalizes you. And I maybe I'm making more out of it than it is, but I just love that about this film.
Well, it's part of the grind, and I think that Judge has this great, pure, unblinking eye in which he sees it. And a lot of other people, they just can't stare into that abyss unblinkingly. They have to pull away and then go to some scene in a beautiful 1920s loft for a while just to get some sort of peace. But Judge can just be there and inhabit these soulless, purely functional areas that are just part of the grind, just part of the daily money-making endeavors that we all must undertake. And there's just something about that unflinchingness that's very impressive.
It reminds me of, I was watching some DVD extras on the Christian Bale movie, The Machinist, which I want to watch at some point. It's a hard movie to watch just because Christian Bale looks so disturbing in it. It's supposed to be set in America, but they filmed in Barcelona, Spain. And they made a comment about, like, how did you do this? How did you make a movie in Europe that's supposed to be set in the U.S.? And he said, we just found the shittiest parts of Barcelona to film in, and it worked perfect. And I'm like, yeah, more or less,
Look, every place in the world has these shitty parts. It's not a comment on America. It's a comment on the human condition.
I just don't think it's, I don't think it's as just infected as much as it is in the U.S. And just the way that we build development is just god-awful and horrible. And I guess they just don't put any thought behind it. It's like completely utilitarian. It sort of kind of destroys the human experience, and not necessarily by design, but by accident and indifference. What always gets me is like those, like you see them walking through those little park landscapes that surround the parking lots that kind of buffer each industrial park, where they
it's part of the water overflow. It's actually pretty important parts of areas that are normally arid and have flash floods. I think that's a really neat part where you see them walking through these ditches.
Yeah.
And how the world sort of is naturally not friendly to human beings and their needs. These areas are built with a single purpose: to go to work and do whatever that is in your cubicle and then get the fuck out of there. And everything else is not thought of. And so they don't put a sidewalk over to Chotsky's. You just walk across the parking lot. And that includes the ditches and everything else. And that's just part of the way that the calculation for these areas is not about people, it's about work. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just simply how it is, out of necessity.
I remember I was in Broomfield, Colorado once for work. Broomfield is one of these, I guess, municipalities that exist in between Denver and Boulder, Colorado, but it's just a suburban landscape of industry. Same kind of deal, same ubiquitous landscapes that we're all familiar with in the suburbs and is depicted in the film. And I remember, like, we were staying at, like, some, I don't know, Holiday Inn Express or something like that. And then there was, like, some sports bar that was down the street and over. And I just remember that landscape being so hostile to walk from your hotel to a restaurant. And, yeah, you're walking through, like, empty, undeveloped lots. You're walking along a road that doesn't have a sidewalk for like 100 yards. You're waiting forever to cross like a gigantic, 8-lane intersection. just being really hostile and unfriendly and not enjoyable at all. There's nothing there for the human being to sort of amble through. And just being really disgusted by it, just kind of, just why do we fucking do this? Why is this? I mean, it doesn't have to be like this. Just a little bit of thought put into something. Okay, you have a hotel, you have some restaurants. Why don't you make it more village-like? Why don't you do something and make it just so damn hostile to humans walking through these landscapes?
They do that. I mean, look at you've been to Mill Creek, where they've sort of done the village thing. They've tried to make it more walking friendly. It's a design ethos that people work on, but on the simplest nature, you just need buildings and you need places for cars to move around. And if you're going to be as simple as possible about organizing a development, that's really your two major concerns, and everything else is sort of secondary. It's just natural. It's natural laziness.
Yeah,
And then it is depressing.
Peter's apartment building, Morningwood Apartments, which I thought was really
Is that what it was called?
I never caught
seen
that. I've watched Office Space about 1 million times.
Morningwood Apartments. Oh, fuck, that's hilarious.
As he was pulling into his, just ubiquitous apartment complex, I was like, did that say? Because I think it's the first time I've watched it on DVD on like a good HD television. And I caught that. I was like, holy shit. Oh, my God. His apartment's called Morningwood.
I did not see that, man. I cannot believe I've missed it. That's hilarious.
And then I started thinking about all those shitty apartment developments that we build.
Oh, yeah.
That he captures perfectly. They all look the same. They're all kind of blocked out in sort of communist-style apartment blocks with carports, in a shared parking lot and all that.
They're just functional, man. Function over function.
And then how we give them those stupid names. We do that to suburban housing developments, too. And there was some developments going in out where you grew up. Remember?
White Folks.
There was a place called White Oaks. And I think Oaks was even spelled like Oakes or something stupid like that. I don't remember.
I don't quite remember.
Trying to give it some European flair, but you wanted to change the sign to say White Folks.
Yeah, I was too lazy to actually do it.
And then there was one right by that called the Vineyards.
Oh yeah, the Vineyards. Yeah.
Sad block of maybe $100,000 to $120,000.
Well, it was weird when I was growing up because when my dad built that house out there near Lake Stevens. That was out in the middle of nowhere. It was actually on a dead end road that went on for a couple of miles. And as I grew up, you slowly saw the green space just get consumed in housing developments to the point where there was nothing but housing developments. There's all the old places on an acre or a half acre, and everything, all the wooded areas, they just were filled in with housing developments. And by the time I left that house, there was no more green space, just houses.
And who thought up those stupid fucking housing development names? Like, what are we going to call this? Ridgecrest, White Oaks. The Vineyards.
Well, the funny thing about developments, whenever you take a plot of land and you subdivide it, there's always a name given to it. And you even see that in old developments, like the development that I currently live in, which was put in 1927. It has a name, like Glacier View or something.
Yeah, right.
I think it's just how when they rezone stuff, they give these developments names.
I live in Green Arbor, which is not to be confused with Blue Ridge, which is just up the street from me.
Yeah.
And
they've always named them stupid shit. Forever. It's just the way it goes. They got to come up with dumb name, and it's just some guy who doesn't give a shit. You just put two words together and you call it good.
So, Beef, I want to. We've talked sort of about, I guess, the existential nature of Office Space, but I definitely
there's one thing about the existential. There's a point where Peter really sums up a real deep depressive existential crisis, which I've found myself in on quite a number of occasions over my years. And I've just never seen it put so simply. Here it is.
Ever since I started working, every single day of my life has been worse than the day before it. So that means that every single day that you see me, that's on the worst day of my life.
What about today? Is today the worst day of your life?
Yeah.
Wow, that's messed up.
That's just so poetically sad. It just sums it up beautifully. It's perfectly when you're really in one of these deep existential depressions. That is exactly how you feel.
So I want to talk about, why this film is so funny. And I want to talk about some of the characters in it that make it so funny. I was watching some of the DVD stuff, and I think the timing, the beats in this movie, is done in such a way that its subtlety adds perfection to the film, and it adds an imperfect quality to the characters that makes them, I guess, more real. The sort of fighting for words and to express themselves, and I don't know. There's an imperfectness to it that makes it great.
It's just there's just so many, and some of the peripheral characters are great. Like Drew's one of my favorites.
I'm thinking I might take that new chick from logistics. Things go well, I might be showing her my O face. Oh.
I think that's now a common part of our lexicon. I've heard that oft repeated, and I'm pretty sure it started in the film. The O face. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, Ron Livingston, who I like him as an actor. He's I don't know. He's always plays kind of, I guess, supporting characters. He never really has his own deal going on. But
yeah, he's one of those guys that always just sort of plays the Ron Livingston character. I mean, you see it in Band of Brothers, which he's really good in. But he's basically playing almost the same character, sort of a existentially haunted character.
So he describes himself as sort of like the bus driver, where all these crazy characters are getting on and getting off the bus.
That's a really nice moment. That's a wonderful descriptor.
Yeah, because he plays sort of he's this like common thread through the film, but when a character comes on, they steal the scene from him, and he willingly lets that happen because it's way more entertaining. Like Lawrence, who I love. Lawrence.
Yeah, there's Lawrence. Yeah, Lawrence is great. That's one reason I opened the show with him. But just to say 1 second before you talk about Lawrence, is I think that's a common storytelling technique. I think we were discussing this last week or the week before, where you need a character that has sort of gaps in him or sort of has an emptiness that you take yourself and fill. And I think that's what you do with Peter. Is you sort of, at least I find myself, you identify with him and you sort of become that character while you're watching the film. And I think that's really effectively employed in this case.
Right, yeah. Him by himself isn't... I mean, there's a lot of scenes with him by himself, and they're funny. But they're not as hilarious as Michael Bolton suffering the legacy of having the same name as Michael Bolton, like when he's meeting with the Bobs.
You are Michael Bolton?
Yeah.
Is that your real name?
Yeah.
Are you any relation to the pop singer?
No, it's just a coincidence.
Vic, I'll be honest with you. I love his music. I do. I'm a Michael Bolton fan. For my money, I don't know if it gets any better than when he sings "When a Man Loves a Woman."
But you must really love his music, huh?
Yeah, he's pretty good, I guess.
You're goddamn right he is.
Right.
So tell me, what's your favorite song of his?
I don't know. I guess I sort of like them all.
That's so right. I'm the exact same way, but it must be twice as hard for you being have the same name as him. I celebrate the guy's entire catalog. Anyway, let's get down to business, Michael.
You can just call me Mike.
That's